What's going on, guys? Today I'm going to explain all 7 curse techniques that have been used by members of the Zenin Clan. In Jujutsu Kaisen, the Zenins are one of 3 major bloodlines that hold the most influence, and as of making this video, they've had more members appear in the series than any other family. Within the clan itself, having a powerful technique is valued above virtually everything else, as those who have them occupy all the high positions of power, whereas those without are made to either be servants or disposable soldiers. Women in particular are treated like garbage regardless of whether they have a unique ability or not, further emphasizing that the Zenins are just not good people. That being said, in this video we're still going to break down each of their techniques, but spoiler warning ahead as I will be going into content from the manga to explain it. If you haven't already, then be sure to hit that sub button if you want to see more Jujutsu Kaisen content like this, and let me know in the comments what technique from the clan is your personal favorite. Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is arguably the most complicated, and that is projection sorcery. This technique is one that doesn't have a long history within the Zenin family, however it was possessed by Naobito, who was the head of the clan, and also his son Naoya. At its most basic level, it allows a person to perform 24 unique movements in the space of a second, which effectively gives them super speed. This is why Naobito was known as the fastest sorcerer besides Gojo, but there are a few other rules that make this power more complex. For starters, in their mind the user divides 1 second into 24 individual frames, and from there they need to decide what movements they want to do. Once they make that choice, they can begin the technique, but the drawback is they have to follow through with the motions they chose. As the manga says, the predetermined course can't be adjusted once it's begun, meaning the sorcerer has to complete the motion even if it's no longer beneficial. Now, while projection sorcery normally lasts for a second, it's been shown that with enough curse energy you can maintain it for multiple seconds in a row. This allows a person to continuously build more and more momentum, reaching speeds that surpass the usual limit of the technique. Naoya is the perfect example, as he kept activating it back to back during his fight with Maki, resulting in him being so fast that he literally planned to punch through her. This is in contrast to his fight with Chojuro, where he only used projection sorcery in individual bursts, so he never reached anything close to his top speed. The other benefit of this technique is that while it's being used, anyone touched by the user's palm is also required to move at 24 frames per second. For most people, that's an impossible task given that they don't have projection sorcery, so the end result is that they're frozen in place for 1 second instead. Those who get frozen always appear to be stuck inside a frame, and that's because this technique is based off real life animation. Before we move on, there are a few other rules when it comes to projection sorcery, such as the fact it doesn't allow the sorcerer to majorly defy the laws of physics. One example might be that you can't just teleport from A to B without doing the necessary motions, and it also doesn't let you do crazy stuff like phasing through walls. If Naoya was to try something that insane, then he wouldn't be able to fulfill the predetermined course of action, and if you can't do that, then you end up frozen in a frame for 1 second as well. Final thing to mention is that when the user is deciding which 24 movements to perform, they can't move anywhere that's not within their field of view. The second technique on this list is known as construction, and compared to the last one, it is a lot more simple. Construction enables Mai to use curse energy to create things out of thin air, although the objects can't be anything too big or too complex. Her go-to option has been to use it to make bullets, which is why she carries a 6-shot revolver to confuse whoever she's up against. After 6 bullets have been fired, anyone who doesn't know her technique will assume she needs to reload, giving her an opening to generate a surprise 7th bullet to catch them off guard. This bluff is what she used against Maki during the team battle in season 1, but the freak of nature was still able to catch the bullet pretty quickly. A downside of construction is that it requires a ton of curse energy to create something, so Mai could only ever produce 1 bullet a day. If we compare how she looks before using her technique and immediately afterwards, the nosebleed makes it clear this isn't an easy thing to do. During the series, the largest thing we saw her make was this sword she made for her sister, while she was already injured by the way, and the consequence of that was just not great. Up next we have the technique of Ranta Zenin, who was a member of the Hei before his untimely death. For those that don't know, the Hei is a unit composed of the highest ranked sorcerers the family has to offer, meaning he was at least semi-grade 1. Out of all the characters in the series, I'd say his ability is most similar to Inumaki, in that they're both able to restrict someone using curse energy. While it's true we don't know the name of his technique, it works by focusing his eyes on the target and then a bigger pair of eyes manifest next to the victim. From there his opponents are restricted, but just like cursed speech, the effectiveness depends on how powerful the target is. In order to hold someone in position, it seems like he needs to keep staring at them, and if the giant pair of eyes takes damage, then his real eyeballs also get seriously messed up. Blazing Courage is the 4th technique in this video, and it was utilized by Ogi Zenin, who is the father to both Maki and Mai. This guy is a strong contender for worst dad in the series, and his hatred for his children comes from the fact they prevented him from being head of the clan. According to Ogi, he was a better sorcerer than Naobito in every way, with the one exception being the quality of their children. Whereas Naoya was perceived by everyone as a genius, Maki couldn't even see curses, and Mai didn't have that much curse energy compared to the average sorcerer. That's why in the manga he didn't feel any sadness when trying to kill them both, and this is where we get to his curse technique. Blazing Courage enables the user to create fire out of curse energy, and then use that in conjunction with a weapon. For example, in chapter 148, Ogi's katana was sliced in half by Maki, but by using this technique he was able to conjure up flames to replace the part that was broken. The following chapter he did a similar thing, only that time the flames were way more intense and seemed to be propelled out of the katana at high speed. Being a special grade 1 sorcerer, you would expect that over the years he's used Blazing Courage to incinerate hundreds of curses, which is why he was so confident in telling Maki he could burn her to the bone. Following this, we have an ability possessed by Chojuro Zenin, who was another member of the Hei, and this technique activates when he makes contact with the ground. Using curse energy, he can manipulate the earth to create an enormous pair of hands, which can then be made to do anything he wants. Chojuro maintains control of the hands as long as his actual hands are touching the floor, and like pretty much everyone else in this video, he used it to try and crush Maki like a bug. In my opinion, a technique like this that controls matter in that way, it likely has more applications than just the big hands, but no doubt this is his preferred use of the ability. Moving on, we have the curse technique of Jinichi Zenin, who was a special grade 1 sorcerer skilled in hand-to-hand combat. The first time we saw this character, he attempted to uppercut Naoya, so it does make sense that his special ability is related to punching as well. This unnamed technique can manifest several huge fists to support his own punches, and contrary to what you might think, these fists are actually real. Initially, I thought they were a symbolic thing to represent how hard he was punching, but when you look at the aftermath of his attack, there were multiple separate craters in the ground. This implies that the fists aren't an illusion or a metaphor of some kind, but instead they are real things manifested from cursed energy. That makes Jinichi pretty destructive overall, which I guess it makes sense why he's ranked so highly. Now, the final power on this list is by far the most valuable, and that is the 10 Shadows technique. This is the signature ability of the Zenin Clan that's been passed down for hundreds of years, but in all that time it's never reached its full potential. Users of this technique can in theory control up to 10 different shikigami, however, Volume 14 confirmed that mastering all of them hasn't been done before. When 10 Shadows first awakens in someone, that sorcerer receives a free pair of demon dogs, but in order to control any new shikigami, they have to be exorcised in a ritual. That ritual can be started at virtually any time by making the relevant hand sign, as each sign creates a unique shadow from which the spirit can emerge. The only rule of the ritual is that the sorcerer must defeat the shikigami by themselves, because if anyone else was to help or assist him in any way, then the result would be void. So far in the series, Megumi has gained control over at least 5 spirits besides the demon dogs, and he can summon multiple at the same time or even combine them using an extension of his technique. With this extension, he was able to combine these two to create what is essentially an 11th shikigami, and these flying toads have one advantage over the others. If this hybrid was completely destroyed, they can still return again in the future as long as Megumi has control over the 2 needed to create it. On the other hand, if any of the original 10 are wiped out, then usually they won't be able to come back. Upon death, their curse energy is inherited by the others, which is why the black demon dog was significantly stronger after a sibling was killed. Anyway, in the manga it was revealed that a previous user of 10 Shadows once fought against someone from the Gojo clan who had the limitless curse technique and the 6 eyes. Those past sorcerers were each heads of their respective families, meaning someone of Gojo's level of strength fought against someone who was likely a stronger version of Megumi. The end result was that both of them died, and Fushiguro believed there was only one shikigami that could kill someone that powerful. The spirit in question is Mahoraga, and besides having a super long name, it is also the shikigami that no Zenin has been able to exorcise. During its fight with Sukuna, we learned what made it so unbeatable, as it possesses incredible strength, incredible durability, and is able to adapt to literally anything. Once the wheel in its head makes a single turn, any attack that previously worked against Mahoraga is now able to be countered, so the only way to win is to destroy it with a new attack before it can adjust. An example is how Sukuna initially used his dismantle attack to slice through the shikigami, and although it wasn't fatal, it was enough to cause significant damage. A second later, the wheel turned, and Mahoraga had then adapted to all types of slashing attacks, including the 2 different kinds that Sukuna is able to do. From that point onwards, it was able to either deflect any kind of slash, or if it was unable to do that, then it would still regenerate after the attack was over. This was proven during chapter 119, as even after Mahoraga was relentlessly torn apart by a new type of slash, it began the process of restoring itself soon afterwards. On a few occasions, Fushiguro has considered using this shikigami to kill both himself and an enemy he doesn't think he can beat, but it's crazy that this guy of all people is the one he used it against. Other shikigami he has include Max Elephant, which was able to produce so much water from its trunk that it sent Noritoshi bursting out of a building in season 1. Its massive size can also be used to crush enemies, although this can be countered depending on what technique the opponent has. Rabbit Escape is another shikigami, but as the name suggests, it has no offensive capabilities, and the swarm of rabbits is nearly always used just to distract people. Earlier in the video, I briefly mentioned Nue, but I should further explain that besides being able to fly, its wings can deliver an electric shock to paralyze his opponents. Against Sukuna, this had absolutely zero effect, but Noritoshi was unable to move for a few seconds after being hit with this. Fushiguro can also use its flight for his own movement, and just like the other shikigami he controls, he can make Nue disappear whenever he needs to. Moving over to the demon dogs, these guys have their own unique powers, since they can use their sense of smell for a variety of things, including detecting nearby curses, tracking down certain people, or even tracking certain locations. Toad is mainly useful for his long tongue, which most of the time is either used to target things he wants to either grab, like when he grabbed Nabara, or potentially if he wants to fling someone away, or just potentially stop a certain weapon. Those can all be used with the long tongue. Great Serpent's fangs were useful for biting and restricting the movement of curses, and on top of that, the shadows themselves can be used to store a variety of weapons, meaning Megumi always has options available to him in any given situation. Last thing to mention on 10 Shadows is the domain expansion, which is not something he's been able to complete as of making this video. What I mean by that is that he's not been able to finish the barrier that most domains require, but on the plus side it does still vastly improve what 10 Shadows can do. With this domain he can make duplicate versions of any shikigami, which is why 2 versions of Nue were seen to be attacking this cursed spirit. As we know, he only has one of these in normal circumstances, so I guess if he was to ever control Mahoraga, then he could make duplicate versions of that as well. Beyond being able to multiply the shikigami, the most shocking thing to me about this domain was that he could make a shadow version of himself. A power like that is fantastic for bluffing, so at its full potential, this domain I would say ranks in the top 3. With that said, thank you for watching this video on all Zenin curse techniques, and be sure to hit that sub button if you haven't already. Until the next one, peace out.